Hey, what's up, guys? So we're back again with another video, and this time I am here to discuss essences and talents because I've seen a lot of questions in regards to what I'm playing, what I believe is the best, situationally, what do I think should be good, and I just want to clear up all those questions that you guys may have in regards to how to play balance in Mythic Plus whenever it comes to the stuff outside of the game. So for essences, we got Iris versus Visions of Perfection. You'll see me predominantly playing Visions of Perfection, and this is solely due to key level. Iris versus Visions of Perfection typically is going to be a choice based on the key level. I would recommend Iris for anything below like an 18 or a 19 would probably be recommending Iris. Once you start getting up into the 20s, Vision starts to become a little bit better, make a little bit more of appeal. So let's kind of discuss why. So it actually comes down to Visions of Perfection mostly, not really necessarily Essence of the Focusing Iris. Sometimes the trash lives a little bit longer and Iris is just a little bit worse, but in general, the decision is made most of the time because of Visions of Perfection Major. And the reason for that being, so we'll talk about the minor from Visions of Perfection first. Of course, it gives you cooldown reduction. Once you're neck level 70, you have about a 225 cooldown on Celestial Alignment or Incarn, whatever you're talented into. That means that you want bosses to last 3 minutes. Whenever you're doing anything less than like a 19 or a 20, even on Tyrannical, bosses are not going to last 3 minutes, especially if you have Bloodlust. So that's like a major red flag for you not wanting to run Visions of Perfection Major. The second one is, if you're playing Star-Lord, then the proc from Visions of Perfection lasts 9 seconds. You're probably going to get an Arcanic Pulsar proc as well. So you're going to have about 35-ish seconds of Celestial Alignment uptime. So you're going to have to dot the whole entire pack, and then you use your cooldown, and then you ideally want the pack to last about in the 40-ish second range, just to make sure that you're utilizing your cooldown to its full potential. 40 seconds on trash doesn't last until you start getting up into the higher key range, and then God forbid you take Incarnation, you're going to have like a 55-second cooldown. Just because the RPPM, the random procs per minute on Visions of Perfection Major, you get it's 0.88, so you get almost 1 proc per minute. So you have to factor that in too. So that is the distinction between Iris and Visions of Perfection Major. That's why I normally play Visions of Perfection. However, I recommend for most people, they definitely play Essence of the Focusing Iris, especially if they don't know how to use their cooldowns to their fullest value and their fullest potential. That meaning, like, if you just mash your cooldowns on CD and you don't really know what's going on, if you're not using like method dungeon tools and you really don't understand the pulls that are coming up and you're kind of confused as to what's happening, again, Iris is probably going to be your best bet. So that is that. If you're doing higher level stuff though, Visions of Perfection, very strong. I would recommend playing around it, especially if you are pushing into those higher level keys. All right, so let's start with the tier 15 round. Nature's Balance versus Force of Nature. When do you not play trees? Realistically, Force of Nature doesn't give you super huge value to your own personal damage, but it does do a couple things that are really nice. It allows the mobs to stay grouped up for longer periods of time, which increases the group's overall DPS, and it allows the healer to DPS more, which again also increases the overall DPS of the group. When is Force of Nature not needed? Whenever your tank never has to kite at all, and you would instead play Nature's Balance. So this is like a judgment call. However, by and large, I recommend you take Force of Nature in most situations. There are some times where you could do 10s with pretty geared tanks or something like that where you believe that it's not necessary and you can get away with it. I've seen people even take Nature's Balance in like 21s and 22s and also get away with it. I personally don't recommend it though. So it's kind of a judgment call. There is advantages to both, but I think if you know kind of thing, especially whenever it comes to trees. Bear Affinity versus Restoration Affinity. There are very few times that you should be playing Bear Affinity. However, the only one that you'll ever see me playing it is whenever I'm running Switch Hitter, which is the Azurite trait, that gives you avoidance cap, and I'm on Tol Dagor. So in Tol Dagor, the avoidance cap is actually a really big deal on the Sand Queen and Overseer Corgus because it allows you to mitigate a significant amount of damage whenever you do proc that Switch Hitter with Frenzied Regeneration. Other than that, Restoration Affinity is by far the best, and you can proc your staff pretty easily with it. So, Renewal versus Wild Charge. Renewal is actually really good, but it's typically going to be damage loss, and it's going to be pretty rough to play around Renewal. I would recommend playing it like in stuff like Temple and King's Rest if you're really comfortable with the movement without having Wild Charge available to you. Personally, not super hot on Renewal because I'm pretty bad at this game, but if you are a competent player, you can 100% get away with Renewal. There, no questions asked. That the talent is very good for what it does. But at the same time, if you're playing Restoration Affinity, you also have Swiftmend, which if you need Swiftmend and Renewal, hey, that's pretty rough. All right, Typhoon versus Mass Entangle. There's only one point where you'd ever actually take Mass Entangle in Mythic Plus, I'm pretty convinced. Actually, two. One of them is King's Rest, and the other one is Siege of Borealis. KR for Golden Serpent, if you already have a plethora of Nox and you don't really need anything, if you don't need extra Nox, then there's actually a legitimate use case for Mass Entangle. The other one is Siege of Borealis if you're doing like super heavy spotter cheese, which I don't really expect too terribly many people to be doing super heavy spotter cheese. Mass Entangle is also good for that. Beyond that, Typhoon, Cookie Cutter, pretty much the best in most situations though. But if you're playing Mass Entangle, please make sure you're playing it with intent. Like, there needs to be a very legitimately good reason for you to be playing it. Starlord versus Incarnation. This is actually a very interesting one. So we've already talked about Iris versus Visions of Perfection Major. So Incarn will only ever be taken with Visions of Perfection Major. Point and simple, it will only be ever taken with Visions of Perfection Major. I personally prefer Incarnation, but I'm also doing like 22s where the trash lasts a significantly longer period of time than most people. If you're playing Visions of Perfection, by and large, you probably should be playing Starlord. Starlord and Incarnation are both competitive, but Incarnation is way worse, especially whenever the key level is lower. So like if you're on that like 19, 20, 21 level range, I would still recommend playing Starlord. Even if you want to go higher, Starlord is still very, very strong. Incarnation is competitive once you actually start getting up to the 21s, the 22s, the 23s. But again, you should be playing Starlord for anything less than like a 21. Especially if you're playing Iris. If you're playing Iris, then it's like no questions asked. You always play Starlord. Twin Moons. The rest of the row is bad. Don't take off Twin Moons in Mythic Plus. Hey. All right, Shooting Stars versus Fury of Elune. I think this is the one I'm asked about probably the most, is Shooting Stars versus Fury of Elune. For me, actually, let's actually not talk about anecdotal evidence. Let's just talk about the numbers on this one. Our tier 100 row sucks ass. Point and simple, our tier 100 row is not very good. Either of these talents that you pick, you're probably not losing or gaining too much DPS. Shooting Stars versus Fury of Elune, though. Shooting Stars is really good in dungeons like Tol Dagor, because there's a lot of cannon play involved in Tol Dagor, especially whenever you're doing it with a very competent group. Siege of Borealis, same stuff. Spotter shenanigans with a very competent group is also very good because you kill very little trash. King's Rest, pulls are too small. No real need for Fury of Elune. Temple, Sethralis, same stuff. Pulls are a little bit too small. Fury of Elune is pretty much good in every other dungeon. Beyond that, because the on-demand AoE, while it is pretty shit, is still better than Shooting Stars, not. Something I also want to talk about is Purification Protocol Miner. Purification Protocol Miner follows a very similar vein as Fury of Elune. Basically, the dungeons that you would take Fury of Elune, you probably also take Purification Miner. So, just throwing that one out there because I get a lot of questions about Purification Protocol. If you're playing Visions of Perfection Major, you could be playing Conflict and Strife, Purification Protocol, or Iris Minor. All of those are really good. If you're playing Iris Major, then you could be playing Conflict and Strife Minor, Purification Protocol Minor. And then if you don't have like Conflict and Strife, I would say like Blood of the Enemy or Memory of Lucid Dreams as your minor slots are both decent as well. So that'll be that. All right, I think that should about do it. I hope that cleared up any questions that you guys may have about what's going on talent-wise and essence-wise for Balanced Druid inside of Mythic Plus, because it's pretty tricky. It took me actually a while to be able to form a strong enough opinion about the stuff to be able to tell people that I'm almost definitively 100% sure that this is correct. It just took a very, very long time for me to be able to finally wrap my mind around it wholly. So I hope it helps you guys. I hope you guys start pushing those high keys. If you guys have any questions, make sure to leave them down in the comments. You can always DM me on Discord. Check out my stream. I've been streaming a lot of keys. I've been like pugging keys recently too, doing a lot of random stuff on stream, PvPing occasionally as well. So I appreciate you guys all for checking that out. And that'll do it for me. All you guys who are also watching the podcast, shout out to you guys as well. So I'll see you later. Peace, guys.